like that. Or when you go to the home centers, you find these things, and we go out to construction sites all the time where they have their tapes stapled up. It's like, you shouldn't have to staple your tape. It's got an adhesive on the back that's supposed to stick. Like, if you have to staple your tape, maybe you shouldn't use that.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Ken Keifer, a manufacturer's rep for Sega, a Swiss manufacturer of air sealing, vapor control, and weather barrier products. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Ken, thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
So tell me, has the COVID outbreak brought challenges to your work and home life? I bet it has.
Yeah, I mean, from a work perspective, it's been interesting. We have the building industry kind of paused for a little bit, especially in like the Boston, Cambridge area where a bulk of our business was. So we transitioned to a lot of virtual meetings, which, if you're an outside sales rep for any long period of time, sitting in front of a computer screen for a long, long time can get kind of boring.
Yeah, and I mean, like, people like yourself are hired because of their skills in interpersonal communication. Has that proved to be a challenge for you? Working differently?
Yeah, it's now that we're back on site a lot, it's even different. Like, you go to shake someone's hand, you're like, right, what do we do here?
Right.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting transition, but now it's like, now that the pause is kind of over, now it's like a fire sale. Like, everyone is like rushing to try and catch up and maybe try and get out ahead of potential next pauses, just in case things get bad again.
Sure.
Planning ahead is pretty smart.
What about at home?
At home, it's that's been a whole different interesting story. Transitioning the kids to virtual learning is difficult, especially with the younger kids. We have an 11 and a 6-year-old at home, so it's been.
I got great sympathy for anyone who has little kids at home and trying to make a living. That's a challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah, and my wife is a teacher too, so trying to teach kids virtually and then having kids that we have to manage virtually was.
You're managing them in real, but
right. It was fun.
Is she back at work at the school building, or is she still working from home?
Yeah. So up here in New Hampshire, most of the districts were given the okay to go ahead and go back full time with safety measures and precautions in place. So she's back full time. The kids are back full time, which is good because, like I said, I think the younger kids have a hard time learning virtually.
Oh yeah. And I bet you have a hard time working with the little kids around.
Yeah, it's not easy. This is like this training center of ours is my sanctuary when the kids are home.
Can you tell us a little bit about Sega and the products you guys make, and who are your clients, and where are the majority of your products sold in the U.S.?
Yeah, so Sega's been around officially since 1966. We're a manufacturer. We research and develop all of our own products. We even go so far as to engineer in our own manufacturing equipment, so we can really help out the quality control. We want to make the world's best products, and I really feel like we do. It's a very, very specialized company. We're not like one of those jack of all trades company that gets their hands into a little bit of everything. We're making exterior air and weather barrier products, and tapes to seal those exterior building envelopes, interior vapor control membranes, and then tapes to seal those membranes and penetrations. So
the tapes are a huge part of your business, and I've used them, and they're freaking really impressive at the way they stick. Were those developed for air sealing and weather barrier applications, or did they come from another industry?
So they were developed specifically for air sealing. One of the cool stories is way back at the founding of the company, because Europe's always been kind of on the forefront of air sealing building envelopes. Mm-hmm. So way back at the beginning of the company, the story is that the brothers that own the company, their father actually started repurposing World War II bandages specifically to air seal building envelopes. And when they found that that was there was a market for that, they began, researching different adhesive technologies and things like that, and thus the company was born.
And so, who in the U.S. is buying this stuff predominantly? I don't see these products in like typical lumber yards. I see them in some, but like you're definitely not going to find them in the home center, for example.
Right. Yeah. So our biggest market right now is actually multifamily residential. We've been doing a huge market since since like Massachusetts, for example, has offered a lot of incentives for building passive house multifamily residential. Prior to that kind of bloom of construction, a lot of it was single family passive house luxury developments. So your typical single family production builder is not typically going to seek out the higher performance products. They're working on tight margins. They want low dollar options. So you'll see a lot of us kind of coming in and picking up the passive house single family, the luxury single family, and then multifamily. A lot of educational, like institutional projects. So there's a lot of different venues that we're in, and one of the big up and coming markets is the mass timber market. That's something that we're extremely involved in, especially in Europe.
Sealing between panels, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sealing between panels, temporary waterproofing of the actual panel themselves, because if
we should tell folks what we're talking about. So, cross-laminated timbers are one of the expected areas of growth for wood construction in the world, right? And they're taking fast-growing trees, gluing them together into these big panels, and they're doing commercial and institutional buildings in some cases now, right?
Yeah, and I expect you'll probably even see some smaller buildings, single family duplex buildings, because as some of these panel manufacturers and these modular builders catch on, there's just something to be said about the way exposed wood makes you feel in a building.
So what does your job entail with Sega? What are your responsibilities and day-to-day things you do?
So I'm kind of I wear a lot of hats. So I go from architectural business development. So working with architects to help develop our project pipeline, make sure that we're helping detail review their projects, redlining, helping to make sure that their designs are simple. Simplicity is the key to success. And then once that's done, then we can even help do hygrothermal analysis of the wall systems. Do we have any risk of condensation in the wall? We have an engineering team that'll help with those things. And then once that goes to bid, we help put numbers together for the bidders. We help train their staff on how to apply the products, help oversee some of the different things that are going on in the construction site. We're there for the window tests. We're there for the blower door tests. We want to help our clients be successful with their builds.
And is there a similar person on the West Coast that works for Sega?
Yes. So we've got, there's two of me in New England. So I work with my colleague, Mark Coviello. We take care of New England. He's up near the Burlington, Vermont area. We've got a guy that runs like the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey market. And then we've got a guy out on the West Coast. He's also named Ken. Our guy in New York, his name's Jay. And then we just hired a business development rep for our passive territories. What we call a passive territory is where we don't have active people on the ground to go out and help physically. So his name is Yusang. He's a new hire for us, straight out of college. So he's going to be developing business in territories where we don't.
And is the model that you go and bang on architects' doors and try and convince them that your products are a viable solution to their envelope problems? Is that the plan?
Yeah. We get we do a lot of that. That was a lot of how we got our business rolling in the U.S. Mm-hmm. A lot of things have changed since then. Now that we're getting more market notoriety and things like that, we get a lot more inbound
People are
prospects.
seeking you out instead of you going and banging on doors.
Right.
Mm.
Which is great now because it's hard to go bang on doors right now.
Yeah, totally. So, is your background in the construction industry? You mentioned earlier that you've been in sales for your whole life, but was
Yeah.
it building products?
Yeah, I've been working with building products since I was 16 years old. So I'm 35 years old now. So um,
How the heck does one become a manufacturer's rep when you're 16?
well, that was I was actually working in the millwork department at Lowe's
Oh, interesting.
back in the day, and kind of branched off from doing that, and I got into kitchen design. From kitchen design, I was that's where I got into my outside sales role and started working with a Spanish manufacturer of tile, kitchen and bath products. Then went off back into the window world and worked for a U.S. manufacturer of windows, a pretty popular yellow Target company. And
I can't
then
guess who that is.
and and then Sega, Sega was looking to really make a market push into the area. So that's how I ended up here.
It's funny, your Instagram feed describes you as a tape ninja and air tightness wizard. How does one become those things, I must ask?
Well, the first thing you got to do is you've got to kind of get a good understanding of how different tapes can be and how important air sealing is. I was like everyone else was when I was working for standard manufacturers. Like, tape's tape, building wrap's a building wrap. What's the big deal? Then you go to a company like Sega, and you get this understanding from the engineering teams and the lab technicians and the chemists, and you're like, oh, okay. and then it's like a 4-week intensive training process at the factory in Switzerland of not just, all right, here are our products. It's why do we do the products? How does building science work? How does vapor drive through buildings? How does air sealing affect moisture content in the buildings and rot and mold growth and all those things? So you get this like huge like educational bombardment, and then they teach you how to do everything, and then they teach you how to teach people how to do it. So once you go through that, that the tape ninja and the air tightness wizard, that's just the next step.
Did you feel overwhelmed when you started those trainings? Was it, or did you have enough knowledge to kind of get your feet wet
Yeah.
without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think I had enough knowledge to get my feet wet, but they do it in such a way that I think even if you had no knowledge of any of this stuff beforehand, it just they feed it to you in such a way that it just makes perfect sense. They're really, really good at what they do.
Can you talk about how these products are used in Europe? My understanding is that Europe has a predominantly masonry construction. Are these products that Sega makes useful in masonry construction, or do I just have it wrong that there are wood frame buildings too?
Yeah, so you're right. It's predominantly masonry buildings, especially in the single family, the home area. Some of the bigger buildings, yes, they're still masonry, but they are doing some wood frame construction out there. And that's one of the cool parts about our materials is that we design materials to work with masonry because of how big that market is in Europe. So we're a little different here in the U.S. So in Europe, it's like the tapes are the big thing, and it's true here too in the U.S. But in the U.S., the membranes, the building wraps, are also a very, very big portion of our business, where those are a smaller part of the business in Europe. So yeah, we have tapes designed to stick to masonry with no primers in any weather condition, basically.
How does that work?
Technology,
Yeah.
smart
Are they
people.
acrylics?
Yeah, they're pressure sensitive acrylics. So you roll them on and they wet into the substrate and they just stick, and they stick so well. Like you don't want to stick them to something you don't want them to stay on.
That's what's so amazing to me about the evolution of air sealing tapes, and it's happened in my lifetime. I would say these products did not exist when I was in the construction industry in my early career, but they freaking really work.
Yeah, they do. It's crazy because like working at the home centers and stuff like that, or when you go to the home centers, you find these things, and we go out to construction sites all the time where they have their tapes stapled up. It's like you shouldn't have to staple your tape. It's got an adhesive on the back that's supposed to stick. Like if you have to staple your tape, maybe you shouldn't use that one.
So this is a good segue. What do people get wrong most often about bulk water, vapor barrier, or water vapor and air control layers, and the products that are meant to deal with these various forms of water?
Well, I think it's just like that. It's like we get a lot of kind of stuck in our ways, right? We've been doing it this way for 30 years. Uh, but there's always new paths to learn. So one of the things that I think a lot of people get wrong, and I hear it all the time, is buildings need to breathe, right? Because if you look at like an old building in Boston, they've been there for 200 years, 300 years, and they're just fine. But they're built differently, right? There's no insulation, and they're healthy because there's so much air moving through them that they can't stay wet. And then we start changing things. Instead of using board sheathing, we're now using 4x8 sheets. So there's more area for that board to be cold and condensing surface. There's less path for air movement. And then we started changing the how the building's thermal envelope looked. So the sheathing in an old building, even with board sheathing, would probably be warmer because you got a lot of hot air from the house hitting that sheathing. Now we're insulating that. So that sheathing's going to be cold. So that's now your condensing surface. So now we're understanding that, hey, air carries moisture, and the warmer that air is, the more moisture it carries. And as soon as that moisture hits a condensing surface, that's where it's going to soak into the wood. That's where you're going to have your rot caused. And then there's also a lot of misunderstandings too about your vapor control. Back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, when like 6 mil poly became a really on the market kind of idea, there wasn't air conditioning as much, right? In New England, for example, vapor typically drives from inside to the outside. But in the summer months, when it's 95 degrees outside and almost 100% humidity, the vapor is going to drive inward. And if you are also air conditioning that building, that poly is now going to be your condensing surface because your wall sheathing is cold comparatively to the exterior environment. So, yeah, I mean, our understandings are getting better and better of how buildings operate and how important air movement is to water management and to the building's efficiency of operation.
So why do you think there are so many envelope failures in this country? And are these problems common in Europe too, where your product started?
Yeah, so I think that to answer the second question, they're not actually as common. So I did talk to some of my colleagues who came here from the European market. And yes, of course, building envelope failures do happen over there. They aren't quite as common as they are here. And I think a lot of that has to do with the perception of the trades in Europe. So in Europe, the trades are very highly trained. They go through continuous training programs. They seek out and make time for those training programs. And they're also, if you go to Europe and you say, I'm a tradesman, you're looked highly upon. And that's a little bit different in this country. Unfortunately, everyone's saying, you have to go get a 4-year degree in like computer science or, biomedical or whatever it is. And then they're like, oh, you want to be a builder? Like, why? Why are you going to waste your life on doing that? And that's unfortunate because, these are the people that are building everything that we occupy and use. These are highly skilled craftspeople, and to have that kind of difference of opinion on people, I think is one of the largest. That in the training. We don't see a lot of training offered in the U.S. For people that are interested in doing these things.
How would you describe the quality of training for tradespeople in this country?
I say that the training that we do have is pretty good, but there's just so little of it. I think it's harder to find. Maybe people don't seek it out quite as much. So nothing to say that there's like for example, here in Salem, New Hampshire, the high school just had a multi-million-dollar renovation, and they put a construction technology facility in that building, which was
Interesting.
something they have never had. So I'm starting to see maybe a tide shift in that. We've got people like Mike Rowe who are really, really pushing this. The trades are important, and
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to get a lot more higher profile people talking about the importance of the trades and how great of a career it is. And I think the training will follow that too.
What was the driver of the school you just mentioned? Was that community, or was that the district, or was that contractors requesting that?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of everything. It's not maybe not the contractor request, but I think part of that school, it's a career and technology school add-on. So it's like a vocational high school within the regular high school. Uh, Construction technology is just one of many things that they put in there. They do have like biomedical, um, culinary. They have all those types of things in there, but their construction technology centers. I think a lot of that was district driven. The fact that we understand that there is a skilled trade or skilled labor shortage in the trades, and we need to do something to address that.
Changing gears here a little bit. What do you think are the best wall and roof assemblies for wood frame construction? And then I'm going to ask you what you would build with in a little bit after we discuss what is the best.
Yeah. So the best is good old Dr. Joe's perfect wall, right?
Do you
Get
think so?
Yeah, I mean,
Insulation on the outside?
insulation on the outside, because I mean, if you can put your air barrier there on the exterior sheathing, get your insulation on the outside. Now your dew point is outside of your building envelope, so your risk of condensation and moisture intrusion or moisture buildup has been significantly decreased. Uh,
So I'm going to ask you, and maybe it's a silly exercise, but so what are the air sealing details?
honestly, they're very similar. We're still taking the sheathing. I'm a big fan, and I think in the U.S. it makes the most sense to put your air barrier on the exterior.
Yep.
You know, it's different in Europe. The air barrier is typically on the interior.
So is the air barrier a self-adhered weather-resistant barrier, or is it tape sheathing?
I think the self-adhered weather-resistant barrier is probably your easiest method. Tape sheathing is a great method, but it requires a little bit more detail orientation. You've got to make sure that all of your tape joints are well adhered. There are no fish mouths or anything like that. And depending on the side of the building, the bigger the building gets, the more of those tape joints there are to try and quality control. So,
Sure.
a self-adhered weather-resistant barrier, I think, is the easiest and fastest way to get your building airtight.
So knowing a little bit about what like outside sales reps get paid in the building materials industry, what kind of house would you build? I'm sure money is not bottomless, right?
Right. So from a affordability standpoint, I like, single stud wall. Double stud walls are great, but they get expensive, and they can be harder to build if you don't have the right people.
And
Uh,
insulating them is a challenge, right?
yeah, insulating can
Yeah.
be a definite challenge. You get some benefits, of course, to that, service cavities and stuff like that. But a single stud wall with a good vapor control layer, the drywall not installed directly to the studs, but off of furring strips to give a little bit of a chase for wiring or things like that, or just to avoid puncturing, even if you're just hanging a picture of the interior membrane. At least 2x6, preferably 2x8 wall. My preference for insulation would be dense packed cellulose. Um,
What about roofs?
Roofs, I still like dense packed cellulose. A lot of it.
Yeah.
um, and then a good vapor control membrane there. Um, and then outside of that, if I could, it's a little bit more expensive again, but a vented roof with an airspace above the sheathing, so that any of the vapor stack can leave the building and be evacuated through the.
So you're not saying an airspace under the sheathing, you're saying on top. So you, in essence, need two layers of sheathing with something separating them. Is that correct?
Yeah, unless you're going to do something like standing seam metal,
Yeah.
you can get that up off the sheathing without a separate layer of sheathing, or even like clay tile.
That's for drying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's to keep your building nice and uh, the vapor the vapor can move through the building and not accumulate in your sheathing. It can dry out because when I think when most people consider the building needs to breathe, what they really mean is it needs to dry.
Yeah, sure. Recently, I've heard building science and code experts say that code has kept up with thermal control and more recently air control, but vapor control is lagging behind. Do you agree that vapor control has been shortchanged, and what should we do about it? What are the risks when vapor control isn't given adequate attention?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the prevalence of like uh, polyethylene or the 6 mil poly. So many people are still using that, and it can be dangerous because if we're not air sealing the 6 mil poly, um, the the data on it is if you take like just drywall itself can permeate at about a third of a quart of water through a heating season in a climate zone like New England's.
One sheet?
One sheet, one 4x8 sheet, one third of a
Uh-huh.
quart. But if you cut that and have like a little 1 inch by 1 inch square hole, now through the heating season, through that 1 inch square hole, we're up to about 30 quarts of water. So that's one of the dangers, right? If we don't have that air barrier aspect, air movement is going to carry all of that water through those areas. So when you look at like building failure pictures where 6 mil poly, honestly, any type of vapor control membrane is done, you often see like the mold and rot at the overlaps of the membrane, at the electrical boxes, at the bottom of the wall, the top of the wall, the windows. So anywhere that there's a cut or a void in that vapor control membrane is often where you'll see the problems. And that comes back to I think people just aren't aware that that problem can exist if you don't go through and make that layer continuous.
But we're still talking about air control, right? Those problems are resulted from air leaks, not from vapor moving through assemblies.
Right.
Is
And
there a similar risk with water vapor?
yeah, I mean the air leak will create the water vapor problems. Diffusion is a much slower process, right? So when you're talking about once the air leak is taken care of, so that's the bulk of your vapor issue. Diffusion is a much smaller problem. So when we're talking about permeability materials, basically like 6 mil poly is zero perm, so it's going to stop all vapor from moving into the wall, but it will also stop all vapor from moving from the wall cavity to the inside. Like when we're talking about a cooling area. So just like I mentioned earlier, in New England, when it's 95 degrees, 90% relative humidity, the vapor is trying to move inward. It's also going to block it there. So that kind of gave birth to the smart membrane, where as the humidity gets higher, the membrane opens up more to allow vapor to pass through it when needed.
It's to me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's a very curious material that is, in essence, a plastic, but its permeability is variable. How does that work?
Yeah, so from on the polymer scale, basically those polymers begin to open as they draw more moisture toward them. So it's a lot like plywood does the same thing. Plywood's an OSB. As they get wetter, they have the ability to dry faster. They get more permeable. So they've taken that and they've applied it to the polymers and the plastics, and that's helped substantially. And the problem, though, is now it poses its own risk. Is now if you're say building in the wintertime and you're pouring your foundation,
Yeah.
so you've got your foundation, you've got your plaster work, your masonry, tile, all this stuff is just pouring water into the building. So that building can see 80, 90, 95% relative humidity for a long time if it's not properly dehumidified. So those types of membranes would then open too far up and allow too much moisture to load the walls in those scenarios. That's why if you look at their technical guidelines, they will tell you if this is a wintertime build, you should dehumidify the space.
Do you think people are getting that?
I I don't think so completely, um, because it's such a small part of that technical guide, right?
Yeah.
And if the appropriate manufacturer isn't notifying, oh hey, you know, oh you're building in the wintertime. Here's some things you need to watch out for. Um, then they're not going to. It's because it is. If you read through it, it is just a small little part of that technical guide.
How long do people typically have to run a dehumidifier, saying a build that started in the beginning of winter? Like, is it throughout the building process, or can you turn it off in the spring?
Yeah, I think you could turn it off in the spring. We had a project. We had a project in Greenfield, Massachusetts, that had some humidity issues because of the use of a smart membrane in a wintertime build. And they did dehumidify the space basically from, I think, November on through the spring, and those humidity issues that were present at the roof had gone by then.
Were you seeing bulk water on the roof sheathing? How did it show up?
You could see all of the joints of the sheathing, so it had actually buckled the shingles.
Yeah.
So the shingles had settled down, and by the springtime, they had got the relative humidity down to about 40%, which is about where it should be for the interior of a building in this climate zone.
So you must have taken a frantic call from a builder, right?
Yeah, I got a call from the builder, and the architect was like, what's happening? It wasn't our interior membrane, but it was all of our exterior materials. So they're like, is it you? Is it the roofer? And we determined that it was just improper dehumidification. And through all the parties involved, it was a hard pill, of course, for the building owner to swallow, that they just had to wait it out.
Yeah.
Because
nobody wants to wait for anything, right?
Right, and it's concerning. You're looking at your roof shingles buckling, and you're like, I'm supposed to wait this out. Like, this is going to get better. But yeah, it's one of those things, and it was kind of a wake up call, because everyone's like, oh, we didn't even notice that. And these the architect, the builder, these are really, really highly trained people that were doing this one. It wasn't just some off the wall builder that just started a month ago. These are really smart people that we've been working with for a while, so it's easy to miss.
Yeah, and the methods are different, right? It's like you can't expect to have go through this process without some surprises, I'm sure.
Right.
So this is my favorite part of the show. Can you tell me about your own house? Do you have any new or lingering building science problems you are either happily or unhappily ignoring?
My house is a nightmare. So I live in the typical 1970s New England colonial split level.
Is it at board sheathing, or is it plywood, or don't you know?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's OSB, most likely. Just having peeked through some of the areas that weren't so well done.
Is it brick, or does it have siding on it?
Oh, it's vinyl siding.
Uh-huh.
It's vinyl siding. So when I'm down in the lower level in the wintertime, I can feel air blasting through my outlets that are on the outside walls. I mean, literally, like, you can put your hand like this far away from the outlet and just feel a breeze through the outlets.
Are you tempted to want to fix that stuff, or can you, or like you're going to build?
I can, I could remove the sheathing and air seal the exterior, but then at the same time, it's like, I've got cheap builder grade vinyl replacement windows. That's what everyone does when they're getting ready to sell the house. Replace the windows with the cheapest thing you can buy, like new windows, like vinyl. No, they're garbage. The screens fall out when you open them. Yeah, I could do that, but then I would want to replace the windows. I would want to put nice triple pane windows. I'd want to add the exterior insulation. So it's
a big project, right?
Right. It's the big project. Basically, I'd be redoing the entire exterior of the house. And then, of course, you got to bring in ventilation, because you can't build it tight without ventilating it right. So it's just the snowball of things that have to happen in order for me to get where I want to be with that building. But there's the biggest problem that I have so far, and I'm petrified to take apart the sheathing is the garage was an add-on in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't flash the garage to the house. They just caulked the vinyl siding J channel, and
Oh,
we
that's
consider that
horrible.
good.
That is
There's
just horrible.
there's no kick out flashings, and I found this out after the first big storm when we moved in, and it was raining down the wall inside the garage.
No.
Uh, and I noticed it because I was in the laundry room. So the laundry room is the first place that you go to
So that's in
when you
between the like garage and the rest of the living space, right?
right. So you go from the garage into the laundry room. I'm out, helping with the laundry, and I'm hearing water running, and I'm looking around. I'm like,
That's not the washer.
where is this coming from? And I go to the door leading to the garage, and it's dripping off the interior hinge. So it's running down the wall in the garage, hitting the header of the door, and coming into the building from the hinge, and just running stream of water right down the hinge. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
So what tape do you use to fix that?
Oh man, I taped it. I sealed it from the inside, and I sealed the header off. So I've stopped the water from getting into this house, but it stays on the garage side right now.
Oh my God, dude, that's horrible.
Yeah, I'm scared to see because that side of the building never gets sun. It's the south side of the building, so it never gets sun. So I'm horrified to take it apart because I know I'm going to find I'm going to be able to just put my hand right through the sheathing.
Do you have a thermographic camera? That would be fun to look at.
I don't, but that's something that I definitely want to get.
Yeah.
I'm also afraid to see what my house looks like with an IR camera.
Don't show the family. That's what I would tell you. Keep that to yourself.
Yep.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you, Ken. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been great to have to be here and to talk shop with you guys. If you don't mind me taking a little second to plug our training center.
Please.
We talked a little bit about training today, and that's where we kind of built this training center for. We do training all over the world, so we have training centers, a couple of in Europe. We're putting one together in Vancouver, British Columbia, and our U.S. training center is here in Salem, where we go through. We have two mock-ups that are 7-foot cubes. With
They're just little
windows.
houses, and you're having people detail them. Yeah, cool.
There's little houses. Currently, we have paused the training while we kind of try and figure out the whole pandemic thing because it is an indoor facility. But we're going to be starting that back up in January because we're taking some time during the pause to kind of add more to our training repertoire, break out some of the things. So if you're a window installer and you're coming and you want to do this, you can do it without having to go through other things that maybe don't concern you, like interior vapor control membranes and stuff like that. So we're going to also try and make some a la carte trainings that are specific to certain trades. But currently the trainings are free. Depending on the training that we offer, we might add like a little basically symbolic fee because it's going to have we're going to be feeding you lunch and everything like that too. So
are most folks tradespeople, architects, supervisors? Like,
well, we've had
who
them
are
all
they?
here.
Yeah.
So we've had builders come through, of course. We get a lot of builders come through, but architects and engineers have come through because the value of having a hands-on training for even an architect or a builder is huge because now they kind of put what they're detailing, what they're drawing in a two-dimensional plane, they're putting that into physical practice and understanding how constructability works. So that's really helpful. We've actually even had realtors and banks come through trying to understand some of these higher performance buildings and how they can market themselves in a better light. So we've had all kinds of even people just building their own home and just want to understand, all right, how is my home being built? What should I look for and how should I approach my house build and things like that. So we have the training center for that. It's also free to use for industry partners. So, window manufacturers can come in and set up their own trainings here. That's just an example, insulation manufacturers, the whole gamut of people could come in and use this facility. And it's just a partnership because like we talked about earlier, I think
everyone wants it to work.
Yeah, everyone wants it to work. Buildings are getting a little bit more complex, and we just want to make sure that we have high skilled trades, and everyone's working together and being thoughtful about how they build buildings.
Awesome. Anything else you want to ask or tell our listeners? Where can folks learn more about Siga products? The website.
Yeah, so, our website is www.siga.swiss. So that's going to be, all of our products are going to be listed there, all of our information on our trainings, all of our information, like technical data and all that good stuff, contact information for your local rep. And then, of course, we're quite active on social media. So you can find us on Instagram. It's at Siga_North_America. And then, of course, my Instagram feed, which I haven't been as active on the last couple of weeks because it's been crazy the last few months. But is at tape_ninja_Ken. So got it.
You're going to need some T-shirts with Tape Ninja, buddy.
I know. I definitely need to get a little wig glove bandana on the little guy with a beard.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Ken for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Happy building, and keep craft alive.